Welcome back to another week of meal planning and prep. This is an interesting week because it's Thanksgiving and we have a birthday in our family. So I will only be cooking about 4 meals this week. And I just pulled from some family favorites that wouldn't be too complicated since it's a busy week of cooking and preparing for hosting Thanksgiving dinner. So I chose some casseroles, some yum bowls. If you're familiar with Cafe Yum, that's where I got the inspiration for that. Okay, let's start here with the chicken broccoli casserole. This is really simple and easy. It just has basic ingredients, so it's easy to pull together. We're going to start by chopping up 2 chicken breasts and putting a little oil and salt and pepper, mixing that up, putting on frozen broccoli, but you could also use fresh, and covering that and cooking that in a 400-degree oven for 20 to 30 minutes. If you have already cooked chicken, you could just add that directly into your casserole, and you could steam the broccoli in the oven. Then you're going to make up your sauce in a separate bowl. And I started with a 1/2 cup of milk, but as I got mixing it, I realized, ooh, it's a little too thick, so I went ahead and added more milk. And the secret ingredient of this recipe is the curry powder, which makes it it doesn't taste overly curry. It just gives it a nice little flavor. So mix that all together. Then I pulled that out of the oven, the chicken, and I stirred it. And then when it was done, I stirred it again to loosen everything up. And I ended up taking out a little bit of the chicken and broccoli. I added my noodles, 3 cups of cooked noodles, and then some sauce. And I added back the rest of the broccoli and chicken. I just wasn't sure I was going to have room in that pan. And then I added the rest of the sauce, and I ended up having plenty of room. So I mixed that all together and smoothed it out. Then you sprinkle on your Parmesan cheese and breadcrumbs. I just use panko, but you could use whatever breadcrumbs you want. Then you'll bake that, and this has to be one of my family's favorite recipes. Next, we served it up and we ate it and enjoyed it. But the next meal that I made was the yum bowls. So this is inspired from Cafe Yum, which is a restaurant in the Pacific Northwest. And I found a Copycat yum sauce recipe years ago, and I don't recall where it was from, but I kind of adapted it a little bit. And it tastes pretty darn close to the real thing. And since I don't live near a Cafe Yum, it's a really good way for me to get my Cafe Yum fix without having to drive far away. Anyway, you mix up all those ingredients in a blender till smooth, and you can store that in a jar. And I like to make my own fresh salsa to go in these bowls, but you can definitely use store-bought salsa. And this is a really simple restaurant-style salsa, and I love using fresh vegetables, except I like the tomatoes to be canned because it makes it, I don't know, there's something about fresh tomatoes that just makes the salsa a little bit different, and I just really like the way the stewed canned tomatoes make this kind of more like a restaurant style. And then I add a little bit of cumin and some salt and mix that together and set that aside. I love, my absolute favorite way to cook rice is in the microwave. It turns out perfect every time, so that's how I do it. And you'll see it again in another recipe soon. After you've made the sauce and the salsa, if you choose, you can garnish however you want. You can keep this totally vegan and not add any dairy products, but I went ahead and added cheese to mine. And then you add the sauce, and it is delicious. I love it so much. They're such yummy, yummy bowls. So I went ahead and enjoyed this with some avocado and cilantro and green onions. It was delicious. For my next dish, you can definitely do this in a mixer. I did it by hand because my mixer was preoccupied with making a birthday cake. but you can mix this up in a mixer if you don't want to get your hands dirty. I just went ahead and added my seasonings and onions and eggs and mixed it up by hand. Then I added a few breadcrumbs because it was a little slimy feeling, and that helped a bit. Then I formed them using a cookie scoop, and I've used this recipe, something similar to this before with other videos I've put on. So I went ahead and baked those and made more rice. Like I said, I love making it in the microwave. It works so well. Then you make the sweet and sour sauce as the rice and the meatballs are cooking. And you need to add the pineapple juice from the canned pineapple plus water. Then you're going to add your other seasons, ketchup and soy sauce and brown sugar into the liquid. A little bit of salt, some rice wine vinegar, about a half a cup of that. Mix that up really good, and then mix in 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. And then you're going to put that medium-high heat and let that go to a boil. I added a chopped red pepper, but it's optional. And then I added the rest of my pineapple when I got done adding the pepper. Then my rice was ready to go, but it just needed to sit covered for about 5 minutes, and my meatballs were ready to go. They just needed to be put on a paper towel and drain off some of that grease so they'd be ready for the sauce. I added those to the sauce, and then I let it simmer for 2 to 3 minutes. And once it was all simmered and warm, I served it over rice, and it was a big hit for our family. The next day was Thanksgiving, and I did cook a lot for this meal, but I have that in a separate video. But this is kind of what our dinner looked like. It was a lot of fun, and we had some great food. The last meal I cooked this week, I took advantage of the massive amounts of potatoes that we made, and I layered those into a casserole dish. And then the next day I took the leftovers and layered those up. I made up some new gravy since most of our gravy got eaten the day before, and I put that over the top, a few breadcrumbs on top, and then I baked that. And it actually, I know it looks a little bad, but it actually turned out really tasty. It was like having Thanksgiving again. It was a great way to reheat and serve those leftovers. It was a great week.